Hello, and welcome back to another edition of The Creative Quarantine, born out of necessity and fueled by imagination. My name is Reimers, and this week we're making an origami pop-up book. I have 4 sections, each one opens up into this cube-type shape. And where other episodes have a definite set outcome, this one's a little bit different because this one will get you to this basic shape, and where you take it from here will require your imagination. All right, now that we know what we're gonna make, let's see what we need. Cardstock, again, is ideal, but what do I have around the house? I'm back to the yellow folder. It's gonna take me 2 of these. You can use regular paper. Will be a little bit flimsy, but definitely works. And you're gonna need at least 4 sheets. You're gonna want some type of a square just to be able to true things up. A ruler, more so that you have a straight edge to cut against while using your X-Acto knife. If you're not using an X-Acto knife, you're gonna want a pencil so that you can follow those lines with your household scissors. And to be able to assemble all of this together, I'm gonna be using a glue stick, which allows me to do it all at once very quickly. You can use Elmer's glue, but you're gonna have to wait for dry times before going to the next step. And to assist me in putting this together a little bit quicker, I will be using some clamps. If you have clothespins, those work fantastic. I happen to have these little clamps that I'll be using. Now you can use tape. You just want to be careful when pulling the tape off because it will want to rip the paper. All right, now that we know what we need, let's see what we can create. All right, now that we're ready to start assembling here, we've got our folders. I need to cut mine apart, so I'll be using my straight edge. And as you'll see as we get into this, that there is a lot of repetition with these. So once you start getting the steps down, you'll see it becomes real easy. As always, make sure you're paying attention to what you're doing because we don't want anybody cutting themselves. All right, now as you can see on my file folders, I have these rounded edges here. So this is where my square comes into play because I want nice, sharp corners. So I line up the bottom, put my straight edge along that side, cut that off, and now I have nice definite corners. I also like to mark in that corner to know that this is 90 degrees. All right, so now this is where you want to spend a lot of time making sure that everything lines up really well, because the more time you spend in this origami aspect of things, the better your outcome. So we folded that over from corner to corner, open it back up, and now we do the same thing to the other side. Pushing it down so we get a really nice crease. So now we have an X mark in there, and you can make little marks where those two hit in the corners, and you could just use your straight edge from there. But if you were looking to make sure that this is nice and square, that's where you would line up your square. That way you can make sure everything is true. And I look pretty close there, so I'm gonna go ahead and use my lines. So now that I have this square with an X fold in it, I'm gonna fold it over from side to side, so now I get a cross in there also. So now this piece is complete. I can set this off to the side and do this exact same thing to the other sets. All right, now that we have our 4 pieces that are all identical, This one has marks that were on the folder, and I want to try to hide those marks as much as possible. So what we're going to do is cut along one of these lines here, and I'm going to cut along that so I can hide most of those marks. So line up your straight edge on that crease that you made. Start right in the center and cut down. And then I like to fold one half up while leaving the other half down, and then switching them, just so that way if you weren't at 100% center, this now opens everything up. And now we're going to continue that on all of them. So now how we get that cube type shape out of there is that we take, I'm going to take this one because it has less of a mark in it than this, fold that one up, bend it over, and you bend that side up, and that is how you end up with that cube type shape. So I usually start that off on one, do the same thing there, and now I have a single and a 2-ply. So I'm going to put that single up against this 2-ply of this one, and I'm going to put a clamp there just to hold it. I do that same thing again, single, 2. I put the single up against the double, clamp it just so I know where things are. And with how this is laid out now, this double ply here is going to be the back cover of my book. So I do the same thing, but now I have a 2-ply and a single ply. And I'm going to put that single up against this single, so that way the cover of my book is also double thick. So now that I know how it's all laid out, that I have a double layer for that front cover, double layer for the back cover, and it's all going to lay out just how I want it, I'll mark it. So that way I know what sides need to be glued together. I do like to have a piece of paper that I can glue against, so that way the excess goes on here and not my table. So then I know that I'm going to be gluing this side, so this is the front cover. I open this up, take my glue stick, and I like to put my finger right in the center of that bottom part, so that way I can get right up against all those edges to make sure we get a good seal on those edges. And then I just kind of fill in the center, fold everything back over, push it together, and then make sure I push down on it really well just to make sure everything gets a nice seal to it. So then I set that there, go to the next piece and do this on all of them. All right, now that all my pieces are together, now this is where at home you'd be able to work on the edge of a table. I am going to be using this block so that I can elevate it, because now I take that first one that I marked, hang that over like that, and now I have to be able to glue this side to be able to attach all the pieces together. And this is where that glue stick comes in very handy, making things very quick. Same thing, get a nice coat on the outside corners and then just kind of fill in the center. I like to start with that outside edge, just so that way everything lines up flat on the bottom and the outside matches. Pushing everything together. And And this is where I can clamp it at the top and at the bottom, and even in the corner if you wanted to, so that way everything stays together. All right, now everything is glued together. It is a glue stick and dries rather quickly, but I like to let it sit for just a little bit so I make sure that everything is nice and dry. And then by doing it this way, just remember that you're not gluing your front cover and back cover together, so that way you can make it into a book. All right, now that you have your origami pop-up book assembled, back to my favorite thing, bringing it back around, clamping it, and making that 3D shape. Now you say you want a little bit more pop-up in that. This is where you can start adding paper to be able to do an actual pop-up. Right now mine are just taped in because I'm experimenting with placement, and also I wanted to make sure that they will all lie flat, so when I open it up everything will actually pop up. So now I open that back up, and this is where you can stack these, adding a bit more interest to it, doing some type of a tower. You can change the shape of the book. So now this one right now looks like a house, but when I open it up, it now looks like I have a small village. Or I add just a slant to the top, and when it opens up, it now looks like I have a house with rooms. So now, what are you going to do with yours? Now this is where your imagination really comes into play and things start to get interesting. You can play with the pop-up book aspect of things. You could say add pockets and make some type of a junk journal. You could write in it and make it an actual journal. You could paint in it. You could draw in it. Me, I went the route of making a game. So I made mine look like a house when it's fully open after I clamp it. I went board game route, and I now have doors so that my character can go from room to room to room. And right now I've only just started sketching in it, so each room has its own personality. Eventually I'll be adding more of the pop-up aspects to it. And this is where I could take pieces from other board games to use with this, but if you don't have that, if you take some of the scraps that we had from cut-offs from these, you could make yourself a die by taping them together and putting numbers on them. And you could use anything that you would like to around the house for your character. Be it a button, who knows, it could even be a piece of popcorn you found on the couch. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you will experiment. I hope you will play and make many different versions of these, and show me some things that I haven't even thought of yet. And please, like always, share your creations with us on our Facebook page.